It started with flashing lights, a siren blaring through the quiet neighborhood. But these weren't real cops. These were her cops. She thought no one would question her authority. She thought uniforms meant power. But what she didn't know was that this time she picked the wrong fight. The camera of your mind zooms in, neighbors peeking through blinds, whispers spreading like wildfire. Did the police just show up? One muttered. Another voice replied, trembling, no, something feels off. And then, the moment of truth. A man steps outside, jaw clenched. His hands don't shake, but his voice cuts through the air. You're not real officers. Who sent you? The tallest officer smirks, his badge reflecting the porch light. We're here on behalf of the HOA. You've been warned. Either follow the rules, or face the consequences. Neighbors gasp. Kids are pulled inside. And for a split second, silence. But inside that silence, the tension screams. What would you do if this happened to you? Imagine fake cops knocking on your door. Comment below. I want to hear your story. Now, back to the chaos. The homeowner, chest rising, eyes narrowed, refuses to step aside. You think a fake badge scares me? I know my rights. And you've just crossed the line. The so-called officers glance at one another, their confidence wavering. Behind them, the HOA president watches with cold satisfaction, arms folded. She believes the neighborhood belongs to her. Every inch, every rule, every dollar of every homeowner. But tonight, she's about to find out she isn't untouchable, because the man standing before her, he isn't just a homeowner. He isn't just another victim. He's someone who's seen real power, real authority, and real justice. He leans forward, his voice like steel. Take off those fake badges before I make one phone call that changes everything. The camera of your imagination zooms in again on the smirk fading from the fake officer's face, on the HOA leader's frozen glare. The facade of power is crumbling, and just when you think it can't get any worse, one of the fake cops reaches for his belt. Not a weapon, no. Something worse. A clipboard. Final warning, he hisses. Sign this violation, or we'll remove you from this property. The crowd of neighbors can't believe it. Murmurs rise. Fear mixes with outrage, but our homeowner doesn't flinch. Instead, he smiled, a dangerous smile, because behind him something is already in motion. The real law, the real authority, the storm that's about to crash down on this corrupt HOA empire, and that's where the story truly begins. The paper fluttered in the night air, its bold letters screaming, violation notice. But this wasn't a citation from the city. It was a forgery, an invention of power by people who believed a clipboard and a cheap uniform could bend reality. The homeowner's jaw tightened as he stared at the paper shoved in his face. You think a fake signature, a fake badge, and a fake law are enough to take what isn't yours? His voice was calm, but his words carried like thunder across the cul-de-sac. The taller fake officer tried to sneer, but it came out brittle. We don't need your permission. The HOA has authorized this action. The crowd of neighbors that had begun gathering at the edges of their driveways stirred uneasily. Some whispered, "Can they really do this?" Others just shook their heads, too afraid to step closer. Karen, the HOA president, stood behind her men with arms crossed, her smile sharp as broken glass. She thrived on fear. Fear was her currency. Fear was her power. But tonight, something was different. Fear only works until the right person decides to fight back. The homeowner didn't tear the paper. He didn't shout. He simply held it up for all to see. "Look at this," he called to the neighbors. No seal, no court stamp. No official authority. "This is nothing but paper and lies," a murmur ran through the crowd. For years, Karen's word had been treated like law. But seeing it exposed, flimsy and false, was like watching a mask rip away from a monster. Karen's smirk faltered. She snapped at her officers. "Don't just stand there! Do your job." One of them took a step forward, but the homeowner didn't budge. His wife appeared behind him, her voice steady. "You're trespassing. Leave now before you make this worse." Her calmness rattled them more than shouting ever could. Because calm meant confidence, and confidence meant control. Sometimes the strongest weapon isn't rage. "It's certain." Karen's face turned red. "This isn't your land anymore. The HOA governs everything within these gates." The homeowner's eyes burned into hers. "Funny thing about gates, Karen. They don't hold up when the law kicks them down." The fake officers hesitated, glancing nervously toward the end of the street. And that's when it hit everyone. The distant hum of real engines, the faint flash of real red and blue cutting through the dark. The crowd stirred. Neighbors leaned forward, whispering, "Wait, is that—" Karen's face blanched. "No," she muttered under her breath. "Not now. Not here." But the wail of sirens grew louder, closer, unstoppable. The fake officers panicked, their facade crumbling. One dropped his clipboard entirely. The other tried to peel the Velcro badge from his chest. "Hold your ground!" Karen screeched, desperation dripping from every word. "They can't touch us. This is HOA jurisdiction." But the thing about pretending to be the law is that eventually the real law arrives. The first cruiser screeched to a halt at the curb. Then another. Doors flung open. Real deputies poured out, flashlights cutting through the crowd. Their voices rang with authority that couldn't be faked. "Hands where we can see them! Badges on the ground, now!" The fake officers froze, caught between Karen's shrieking commands and the undeniable authority in front of them. One broke first. He raised his hands, stammering, "It wasn't my idea!" "She paid us. She said it was legal." The crowd gasped. Neighbors who had been too afraid to speak suddenly found their voices. "We knew it!" someone shouted. "She's been lying this whole time." Karen lunged forward, her face twisted in rage. "Shut up, all of you! This is my community. My rules." But her words bounced off the flashing lights, powerless now that the illusion was shattered. The sheriff himself stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of decades. "Karen, you're done. Impersonating law enforcement, fraud, harassment. You'll answer for every single count." Karen's screams split the night. "You can't arrest me. I'm the authority here." The homeowner stepped closer, his voice low, almost pitying. "Not anymore." The deputies moved in, cuffs gleaming in the harsh light. Karen fought, thrashing, her shrieks echoing across the lake. But her empire of fear was collapsing in front of everyone. The fake cops surrendered, dropping their gear, their hands shaking as they were pinned to the hood of a cruiser. And just like that, the empire of fear crumbled. The crown fell. The queen was dethroned. The neighbors stood in stunned silence, watching the woman who had ruled their lives with threats and lies being dragged away in the back of a squad car. For the first time in years, the street felt lighter, but the homeowner didn't celebrate. He watched the cruisers pull away. Karen's venomous glare burned into his memory. Because he knew what that look meant. This wasn't the end. Even when the villain falls, their shadow lingers. And as the taillights disappeared into the night, the homeowner realized winning the battle was one thing. Surviving what came next would be another. The cruisers were gone. The night was quiet again. Too quiet. The neighbors, still clustered on sidewalks and lawns, exchanged uneasy glances. Relief should have come, but it didn't, not fully. Because when a tyrant like Karen falls, the silence doesn't mean peace. It means waiting for the echo. Evil doesn't just vanish when the handcuffs click shut. Sometimes it sharpens in the dark. The homeowner stood in his driveway, arms crossed, watching the taillights fade into the distance. His wife touched his arm gently. "It's over, isn't it?" He didn't answer, because deep down he knew the truth. Arrests don't always mean endings. Sometimes they mean beginnings. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Coffee shops, sidewalks, even the local school drop-off line, everyone was whispering. Did you see the police last night? Karen arrested? Can you believe it? Do you think she'll come back? And then came the letter, slipped under every door in the community, typed in bold, all caps. The HOA is not dead. You will all pay. No signature. But nobody needed one. The words dripped with her venom, her style. Karen's ghost had returned overnight. The scariest thing about monsters is realizing the cage won't hold them for long. The sheriff called the homeowner that afternoon. She's out on bail. We're working the charges, but you need to be careful. She's got influence, money, friends who look the other way. The homeowner's fist clenched around the phone. You mean she's free to terrorize everyone again? A pause, then the sheriff sighed. For now. That night, shadows seemed to stretch longer. Every knock on the door felt sharper. The family slept with lights on, every creak of the house pulling them awake. And then it escalated. The first attack wasn't physical. It was psychological. Their mailbox was ripped from the ground. Tires slashed. A dead crow was left on their porch, wings spread like some kind of omen. The neighbors whispered again, fear spreading like wildfire. Some locked their gates tighter. Others started packing bags. If Karen's back, one said, this place will never be safe. But the homeowner wasn't running. Not this time. When fear grips a community, it takes just one person willing to stand. To shatter it, he called a meeting. In his garage, neighbors gathered, faces pale, eyes darting. Some wanted answers, others wanted to hide. But he gave them something else. Karen has ruled with fear. Fake laws, fake police. Lies and intimidation. But look around. Her power only worked when we believed it. Now, the mask is off. We either stand together or we'll all fall apart. Silence. Then slowly, a voice from the back. What if she comes after us? She already has, the homeowner said, holding up the threatening letter. But together she can't beat us all, and something shifted. Heads nodded. Fear turned, little by little, into resolve. A community divided is prey. A community united is an army. But Karen wasn't finished. The following week, a convoy of cars rolled into the neighborhood, strangers in dark suits, clipboards, and briefcases. They went door to door, flashing fake warrants, demanding access. We're here on behalf of the HOA board, they announced. Inspections are mandatory, but the homeowner was ready. This time cameras were waiting. Phone recording. Neighbors, standing shoulder to shoulder. One of the men shoved a paper into the homeowner's chest. Sign this. Agree to our inspection, or face legal consequences. The homeowner held it high. Everyone, look. No court seal. No judge's name. Just more lies. The crowd erupted. Shouts, boos, neighbors calling out, "We're done with you!" The fake enforcers tried to retreat, but the cameras followed. Their scam, exposed in daylight, had no place to hide. Karen, watching from her car down the street, realized her empire was collapsing faster than she could rebuild it. Her eyes narrowed. If Via wouldn't work, she'd need something darker. That night, flames erupted. A shed on the edge of the neighborhood caught fire, burning hot, spreading sparks. Panic swept the streets as neighbors rushed with hoses, buckets, anything to stop the blaze. And in the flickering glow, someone swore they saw her. Karen. Standing across the street, a shadow in the firelight, watching. When power slips through their fingers, tyrants turn to chaos. And chaos destroys everything in its path. The fire was put out, but the message was clear. This wasn't over. It was war. The sheriff returned more serious this time. She's escalating. And if she keeps going, someone's going to get hurt. or worse. The homeowner looked at his neighbors, their faces streaked with ash, fear, and determination. He knew this wasn't just about his house anymore. It was about every single family living under Karen's shadow. He turned back to the sheriff. "Then it's time we finish this. Once and for all," the sheriff hesitated. "You're talking about baiting her out. Drawing her into the open. That's dangerous." "Not if we're ready," the homeowner replied. "Sometimes the only way to end the nightmare is to step directly into it." And so a plan was born. One last trap. One final confrontation. The community would stand together, stronger than ever, waiting for the moment Karen tried again. But what they didn't know was that Karen already had her own plan, and her revenge was coming faster than anyone expected. The battle lines were drawn. The stage was set, and the final act would change everything. The night of the plan arrived. The neighborhood, usually alive with porch lights and quiet chatter, was eerily still. Every house, every family was waiting. Some behind curtains, others standing shoulder to shoulder on their lawns. They weren't just witnesses anymore. They were soldiers in a battle for their homes. When darkness threatens to swallow a community, the bravest thing you can do is strike a match together. The homeowner stood in the center of it all, calm but focused. The sheriff's cruiser idled nearby, headlights dimmed. Officers lingered in the shadows, prepared. Tonight wasn't just about catching Karen. Tonight was about proving she no longer ruled them, and then it began. Engines growled at the end of the street. A convoy of black SUVs rolled in, headlights cutting sharp beams across the pavement. Karen's soldiers poured out, men in fake uniforms, others carrying stacks of forged HOA orders. At the center of it all, Karen herself stepped out, her smirk cold, her eyes burning with fury. "Thought you could humiliate me?" she shouted, her voice cutting through the night. "This community is mine. You're trespassers in your own homes." The homeowner stepped forward. "Not anymore. You don't scare us." Neighbors raised their phones high, cameras glowing like a field of stars. Every move, every word recorded. Karen's smirk faltered. She tried to bark orders at her fake officers, but none dared to advance. Not with the real sheriff emerging behind the crowd. "You've gone too far, Karen," the sheriff said firmly. "Impersonating officers, arson, fraud, it ends tonight." For the first time, her confidence cracked. You can't prove anything." The homeowner held up a folder. "We can. Every threat. Every forged document. Every recording. And now, this little stunt of yours." In the face of truth, even the loudest tyrants fall silent. Karen spun, looking for an escape. But her convoy of SUVs was already surrounded. Officers moved in swiftly, real handcuffs gleaming under the streetlights. One by one, her enforcers dropped their disguises, surrendering, and finally, Karen herself. Dragged toward the cruiser, screaming, spitting venom. "This isn't over. You'll regret this. All of you." But her words no longer carried fear. They sounded hollow, empty. Neighbors didn't cower this time. They stood taller. They shouted back, "We're free! We're done with you!" And just like that, the spell was broken. The monster unmasked. The community reborn. The fire of chaos she had lit was finally extinguished, not by one man, but by all of them together. The homeowner turned to his neighbors, exhausted but proud. "She can't hurt us anymore. We won. Because we stood together." A cheer rose, strong and unstoppable. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt alive, not in fear, but in unity. But as the sheriff's convoy carried Karen away, the narrator's tone shifted once more. Justice had been served. For now, but power like hers doesn't vanish, it waits. Somewhere out there, another Karen, another tyrant, is planning their rise. The question is, will we be ready when it comes? The camera pulls back, showing the neighborhood bathed in dawn light. Calm at last. But the faint echo of Karen's final words lingers in the air like a warning. Because in the world of HOAs, peace is never permanent. It's just the calm before the next storm. The night Karen was taken away, the neighborhood exhaled for the first time in years. Curtains that had been drawn in fear were now flung open. Doors that had been locked tight creaked wide as neighbors spilled out onto their lawns. Some crying, some cheering, all realizing the nightmare was finally over. When a community stands together, even the most ruthless tyrant crumbles. That night was more than an arrest. It was a rebirth. The sheriff's team secured the scene, documenting every piece of evidence. Fake uniforms were piled into evidence bags. Forged documents stacked on the hoods of cruisers, each one a testament to Karen's corruption. The homeowner stood in the middle of it all, humbled but proud. His neighbors surrounded him, not as strangers bound by fear, but as a family bound by shared struggle. "You saved us," one whispered. But he shook his head. "No, we saved each other." And in that moment, they knew the truth. Their victory wasn't about one man taking a stand. It was about every person who decided enough was enough. Every camera phone raised, every voice that refused to stay silent, every neighbor who found courage in unity. Weeks later, the headlines told the story. HOA president arrested for fraud, impersonation, arson conspiracy. News crews swarmed the courthouse. Karen, once smug and untouchable, now stood in shackles, her empire exposed as nothing but smoke and mirrors. The trial was swift. With overwhelming evidence, recordings, testimony, financial records, the jury delivered a unanimous verdict. Guilty on all counts. The sentence was long, but for the community, the real punishment was watching the once feared leader stripped of her power. Justice doesn't just punish the guilty, it restores faith in the innocent. The neighborhood slowly healed. Meetings that had once been tense battlegrounds turned into potlucks and barbecues. Children played outside again, laughter echoing where fear once lingered. Fences were mended, not just of wood and wire, but of trust, but the scars remained. And with them, a powerful lesson. The homeowner addressed his neighbors one final time at a community gathering. His voice was steady but heavy with meaning. Karen thought control was hers to take. She thought power was built on fear. But tonight, we proved her wrong. Real power belongs to people who stand together. Remember this, never give your freedom away. Not to an HOA, not to anyone. Applause erupted. Some cried, some shouted. For the first time in a long time, the neighborhood was free. Not just of Karen, but of the chains of silence. Evil doesn't vanish. It hides, it waits. But so does courage. So does truth. And when the next storm comes, and it will, we'll be ready. The camera of your imagination fades from cheering neighbors to a quiet sunrise over the lake, peaceful, calm, reflecting light across the water. The nightmare is over. The community has won, and yet, the story lingers. Because this isn't just about one neighborhood. This isn't just about one Karen. This is about every person who's ever felt powerless against a system built on greed. If you've ever faced an HOA nightmare, know this: you are not alone. Justice may be slow, but it comes. And when it does, it is unstoppable. And that's how one community stood up to an HOA that thought it was above the law. What about you? Have you ever dealt with an HOA horror story? Share it in the comments below, and maybe your story will inspire our next video. If you found this story gripping, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next fight for justice. Because here on this channel, we don't just tell stories. We reveal what happens when ordinary people stand up to extraordinary corruption. Remember, in the end, justice always wins.